everybody. I'm Jay Gordon, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Azure Cosmos DB Global User Group. We are live, and if you're watching this on demand, thank you. Today we've got a great session. It's called Scripting Common Actions with Python in Azure Cosmos DB. This is our monthly global user group, like I just said. And what do? We try to get together, and I try to get this always on the second Tuesday of each month. And we discuss about different subjects related to Azure Cosmos DB. We do this in combination with our partners at the Microsoft Reactor. And in order for me to get us rolling, I've got to bring in one of my partners from the Reactor. I've got Askia. Askia, I saw you at Microsoft Ignite this year. It was really, really great catching up. We're in this virtual world. I mean, literally, it's called the Virtual Global User Group. And so you and I had never met in person. We finally did. We do this almost every month, so it was really great to catch up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely good to meet you in person finally. Had a great time at the event, so I'm glad it was successful, and yeah,
absolutely.
To keep it rolling.
Before we do these sessions, we always try to do a little bit of housekeeping just to make sure that everybody's aware of not just the Reactor, but how we expect people in our chat to carry themselves while we're doing this. So why don't you go ahead, Askia, and I will be here waiting for you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Jay. Like Jay said, my name is Askia. I am the facilities coordinator here at the Reactor in Redmond. And before we get started, we do have some housekeeping tips that we'd like to go over. We've posted in the chat our code of conduct. And basically what it's saying is that we seek to provide respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain on topic, and be professional, please. We're going to share useful links throughout the chat. And if for some reason you have to drop off, this session will be recorded and should be available within 24 to 48 hours on our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. That's going to bring us to today's session with Jay. So I will, basically it's going to go for approximately about an hour, and I will turn it over to Jay to get things started.
Thanks very much, and I will see you on the other side. We'll catch you at the end. We'll get some closing notes, and hopefully by the end of this session, you're going to even learn something. I'm going to learn something. It's going to be great. So I will see you in a little bit. So, hey, we've got things rolling, and, I wanted to just kind of give you a little preamble before I bring in my guest. So today we're diving into the world of automation and efficiency inspired by Andrew Evans' journey. Andrew, like many of us, we face the challenge of repetitive tasks when working with anything, any technology. I know that in my years in DevOps, one of the big things that we decided to do was to reduce the amount of repetitive tasks that we did by creating automation or creating different tooling so that we didn't have to worry about, all right, I got to sit here every single time and build this database by going click next, last. That doesn't really scale. So there's an exciting part of what Andrew learned is he learned how to harness the power of the Azure Cosmos DB Python SDK, and he developed some reusable Python scripts for some everyday actions. So Python is great to use for like maintenance tasks. You can use it for so many different things. So if you're ready to supercharge your Azure Cosmos DB workflows and reduce that manual work, you've come to the right place. So let's learn together and unlock the potential of Python scripting. Andrew's experience are about to become an inspiration for you. So let me bring Andrew in. I've given him a lot of preamble. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Jay.
Thanks for joining me today. So if I'm right, you work at CarMax. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I'm a principal engineer at CarMax.
Great. So as a principal engineer, I want to ask you how you got to that point. But first and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. You're just like a lot of other community members. I've reached out or you reached out to me, and we ask people to take part. And if you, the viewer, want to present at a future meetup. I will post this also in the chat. You can fill out the intake form, send me what your idea is. I'm going to give you the space, the time, the ability to go ahead and share with the rest of your community members. And Andrew, that's what you're here to do today. But before you kind of get rolling into your presentation, your demo, what I wanted to do is ask you a little bit about yourself. So you, like we said, you work at CarMax as a principal engineer. Can you give me a little information about that road that you took to get here?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again, for having me and let me do this. I love being able to share things that I've learned with other devs and just really the community. My journey to get to where I am now is kind of a long and winding road. We might not have enough time to talk about it, honestly. But basically, I've been an engineer for about 15 years. I've had different roles between consult, basically individual contributor versus like team lead and stuff like that. And most recently, I joined CarMax about 6 months ago, and I started working on a project that we were using, and that's kind of what led me down this path of learning this tool and how to automate what we're doing today. We were presented with kind of a situation where, just like you were saying, we have a lot of manual stuff, effort to try to make our lives easier, I guess is probably the best way to say.
Yeah, making your life easier when you're working in technology, especially around software development, is such a big deal. And so I know that you, as a principal engineer, you want to make sure that things are done efficiently within your group. You want to make sure that the software you're writing, you can do deployments without having to do a ton of overhead manually for yourself. So can you kind of talk a little bit about what brought you to want to build these, and then maybe we'll take a look at what you've built?
Yeah, just like what I was saying a second ago. So when I joined the team that I'm on right now, I immediately noticed that we had a lot of manual processes to do things with data, specifically with Cosmos data. And basically, what I tried to do was find a way that we could script that in a way that we could do it without a lot of the rigmarole that you would do doing these manual things, and then also have a way that we could come back and see history as we've done in the past.
Great. So we've got some time for you to kind of show now that you've done some telling, and it's great. So I want to remind everybody, if you're watching, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. We'll try to address them as soon as we can. We really think that this is a great opportunity for you as the viewer to ask questions. So if you want to ask about Python, you want to ask about Cosmos, you want to ask about automation, this is the place for you to do it, right in the chat. So now I think, Andrew, I'm going to bring up your screen. I am going to kind of take myself out, give you some space. If we have any questions, I'll pop in, and then I'll also remind you of how much time we've got. So we've got about a good 45 minutes for you to do what you got to do. So I'm going to let you do it. All right. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. So I guess the way that I'm doing presentations like this, I kind of have a slide deck which I'm going to show in just a second. But before I begin, just wanted to give kudos to Microsoft just for the tutorials that they have. Have a great set of quick start able to use specifically for getting started with this Python SDK, and then they have a great set of documentation, which is what this page is to the SDK. So I was able to kind of get started, with this journey by just kind of reading through this, doing a couple examples, and then really diving in when I had to try to do the work for my team and what we were trying to accomplish. For the most part, today I show you is actually basically a copy of blog post, which I've shared with Jay, and I'm going to share with the group after the end. But I have a companion project on GitHub that you guys can, or gals, everyone can go out and check out. And this basically has kind of the little building blocks to get you started. Obviously, I can't share the CarMax code because it's proprietary and whatnot. I can show you the pattern, and that's what this project and what I'm going to talk about. So with that, let me use my slide deck, and then we can. There we are. All right, I'm going to switch this over to mode. All right, so basically what I'm going to walk through today, just kind of have a little bit of structure for this presentation. Going to do an intro of me, talk about Azure's Cosmos DB. Everyone, I'm sure here is already pretty much fundamentally aware of, but I just wanted to cover at a high level. I'm going to discuss the problem my team was facing, talk about the SDK, the Python SDK used, and then really kind of a live demo of the example that I was just talking about on GitHub, and then I'll go into what our team ended up doing with what I'm going to show. And then I'll have a brief section for lesson if we have enough time. Otherwise, answer questions and whatnot. So about me, as I said, I'm a principal engineer at CarMax, 15 years of industry experience. I've worked the full stack, and I have master's degrees from Christopher Newport University of Science, and then the College of William & Mary. I have an MBA. So Cosmos DB, everybody, you can pull out the Microsoft Docs on this. It's the NoSQL offering for Azure, globally distributed, automatically scales, there's low latency. They offer, apps and security through encryption. The problem that we were having, or the problem that I tried to solve with what I've done, is that our team was managing multiple collections in Cosmos. This is a used car sale company. They do a lot of, we have to manage inventory and vehicles and stuff like that. We were managing several different collections. Anyway, that we were actually doing things like querying data, doing like dates if we had some kind of problem when we were testing, and even in production, all that was being manually done through the Data Explorer. Data Explorer is fantastic. It's a great tool to be able to see basically how what your data looks like. You can walk through parts to set your settings and stuff like that. But if you have tasks like data clean, or if we need to purge records or something like that, isn't really providing you a way to say be able to offload that information from the documentation, other than just us manually recording that in like notes, or maybe we did a video of what we were doing. So what I was looking for was a way to script this, and then for our team, it's really important to be able to see what we've done for auditing, or be able to even reuse. Like if you have a common situation where your data might be for some reason, and you routinely have to clean it up. It'd be nice to be able to have a script that. So that's where the SDK came in. So the Azure Python SDK or Azure Cosmos DB Python SDK. Sorry, it's a lot to say. It's a managed. You can go out here on GitHub. You can go check it out. The SDK has a lot of great documentation. Just like I said in the beginning, there's some great quick Microsoft tutorials that really dive into how to use this. Really, the kind of building blocks that you need to be able to get up and running with this technology. But fundamentally, the steps that you would normally go through. Obviously, you create your container, like your Azure Cosmos DB container. Maybe you want to create a collection. You can do that with the Python SDK. But regardless, you use the values that are generated from the console as your endpoint, your database ID, your container, and your account key, and then basically just pass it to these assets in the Python code. And this creates kind of a client that you can go and go into operations on. So this code basically just kind of gets you set up, and then once you have your container or your database object, you can do things like you can actually create a container right here in code. You can delete a container. You can also do like query on records. You can do updates. You can do single updates, multiple updates. And it's really pretty amazing stuff. Like you can do things. So with that, let me switch back over to my other window. So what? Before I dive into what the team did, I'm going to just show you kind of all this running in a real time. So basically, I'm sitting here, and I've got this is my Azure account. I've got a little container, right with electronic vehicles. Now, obviously, since I work at a used car company, electronic vehicle appealed to me. I was able to find this data set from data.gov. They just have a data set that you could use and whatnot. So gave me several thousand records. I could just upload into this container and getting going. So I already have that set up. If you look in the blog post, it shows you how to do that. But I'm actually going to show you how to do basically the same thing, through scripting. So if we go back, and this is the sample project that I was just showing you in GitHub. I've added a couple for today that basically have like a process that I wanted to show you. So the first thing was if I wanted to go and load data into a container. This is a Python script that, just like what I showed you in the slide a second ago, I'm pulling in the Cosmos client, the Azure credential object. All this is from the SDK. I'm setting up values and what I need to create client to actually use and run this with, and then in the main I'm instantiating the client, and then I go and create a container. So I want to create a container that called Seattle vehicles. So like basically this data.gov data that I've been showing you. Let's say I just want the vehicles from Seattle. So I'm going to first create the container. So I added this little wrapper function, which uses the create container function from the Python. I'm passing it my partition key, the name of the container, basically everything that you need to go do it, and then you just call it, and then it goes out to Azure, generates this container. Same thing as if you had done this in the console build, but you're doing this code, which is really pretty powerful. Once I have that created, then I'm gonna go and create an instance of the container, I guess in code that I can do stuff with, which is what this line 49 right here does. And then I'm going to read the data that oops, sorry about that. I actually have this wrong order. I want to select this is how you would create it. What I meant to say was that I had, prior to this, I've selected the data from Seattle and output it with pandas. So everything that I just said actually applies to the same script. The difference is that I'm basically just using the query items function of the SDK. So basically, let's just take 2 steps back. Start with the data.gov electronic vehicle data. Got that loaded in a container. I'm running the select script. It's going out and selecting specifically data from Seattle, the collection that I created. Then it outputs it with Python Pandas TSV. Pandas is just a data library, powerful. It's a great tool to use if you do any type of Python scripting. But that's what this script will do. So let me go ahead and just run that real quick, and then I'll go back into the load data. And I apologize for the select data. Oops, do Python 3. All right. So what is output to the call here is the records that I've just did that as logging to basically show that, make sure I could see what I've this line right here is doing. So far what I've done is I've got the data.gov, I've selected the data that I want, and then I've output it into this CSV file. So you'll notice this is a CSV file of the data that's already. Now let's go back to the data. So now I want to go ahead and create her with the data that I selected from the first container, and then I want to be able to essentially upload records that I've selected out there. Now, there's another way that you could have done this, where I could have taken the first collection I had, selected all that data, and then thrown it into the new container. I could have done all this in one script, but I thought it would be cool to do it in 2 different scripts just to show you how granular. So if I go ahead and run the load data script, now this is going to go create that container, and now it's uploading all of that were selected out to the new container that I created. Now let's go over to the console and verify that it's actually there. So let me hit a refresh, and sure enough, we have Seattle vehicles. So what I've done so far, just with the Python SDK, is I selected everything from this vehicles container, which was data.gov data that I started with. Then I got stuff that was from Seattle from that, and then created a new one with just the Seattle. And you notice, if you look at all these, the city is Seattle. So this is all specific to Seattle data. Now, this is great. I'm uploaded and created a container with the Python SDK. Let's start talking about CRUD operations. So let's create, read, update, and delete. These are typical that you have to do, and with the team that we do this all the time. We have to routinely create sets of data. We also have to do things like or update, or we just need to run some kind of report. A lot of times when we're debugging production data, it's really helpful to be able to do queries and be able to see things see where the data lies, in our day to day. So the first one would be just a query. So go back. We're doing the same thing we did on the other scripts. We set up our client object with our Cosmos tools, and then we go down here, set up the client, and then query Nissans. So I want only the data from this container that is of a Nissan. So I just want the Nissan car data. So what I can do is, if I just an example query, this will basically output the values to the console. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I could output this to a CSV just like I did before, but this just shows I'm doing a query. And again, I'm just using the query items function from the SDK. The cool about this also I should highlight is, if you know, I just passed this text query directly into the function. That thing that you would do if you go right here to edit the filter and you write your query. So it's really because basically, I mean, before you start doing this work, you could just kind of figure out what you're doing manually, and then you could convert this into code. It's pretty easy to get. So I've selected on. That's great. I've output them. I'm showing you a quick. Let's talk about something, an update.
Andrew, before you start doing that, we're having a little bit of issue with your audio.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you just a minute for some cover. Would you do me a favor? Just refresh your browser. I'm going to see if that helps fix it.
Okay.
And, your browser for StreamYard, when you get back, we'll put you right back in.
Okay,
so
sure.
You'll cut out. So everybody, sorry about that. I just want to make sure you can hear everything he's saying so far. We're having a great session. We're learning a lot about how Andrew's using Python. Andrew, if you don't mind, just go ahead and refresh your StreamYard session, and hopefully that'll kind of resolve some of the issues. I know some of you in the chat mentioned some of the sound issues that we ran into. So let's just take a second while Andrew's gone, and I just want to remind you all that we've got this URL. I put it in the chat. It's a blog post that actually got me to find Andrew, and here he is. I found him again. He's back. Thanks, Andrew. Let's see if this helps improve the situation. If you want to bring back up your presentation, we'll get right back into it. Everybody, I want to remind you while we're here that if you have any questions, Python, Cosmos, go ahead, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. All right, we are back.
Okay.
And if you don't mind just hitting the hide down there, and then you can get right back into it.
Okay, cool. Do you still sound okay? Did that help?
You're still a little choppy.
Okay.
It sounds a little like max headroom, if you will. If you want to just try in settings, there is the audio section. There is the microphone. If you want to try your other microphone, maybe that'll help.
Okay.
You've got one integrated, or if you got
well, let me try. Hey, let me try.
All right. Yeah, we lost. Now there we go.
Yeah, okay. Does that sound better?
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right back into it. Thanks everybody for dealing with our technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry about that. Right. So now, so back to where we were talking about before. Basically, walking through what we've done so far. We started with a electronic vehicles container, had the data.gov set of electronic vehicles. We then selected the ones just from Seattle. And then we created this second Seattle vehicles container. And so far, all we've done is we just ran an example query. So we basically just queried Nissan cars from that collection, and then we're outputting them. So that's basically as far as we've gotten. So the next steps in the code was that I wanted to show you how to do updates. Updates are probably a little bit more prevalent because a lot of times you have data that needs to be fixed or like for whatever reason, either somebody tested or did something wrong. But this is a really powerful thing to do. So basically, I did. You start with doing the same thing you did on the other one. You pass in your credentials, you create that client object, and then in the main code, I start by a query. So I'm querying the value. So this is basically the same thing I did in the last step, and I'm just doing the ones from Nissan. And then I want to change the status value. So if you notice, let me go ahead and go back to my. There it is. If you notice, these all have statuses, and we just called it uploaded as the status. So let's say that I wanted to change it to something that we could I don't know, just something goofy that we can see offhand. In reality, you would probably change this to something like sold or in process or something like that. But anyway, I'm just going to change all the statuses and Nissans to hello from Azure Cosmos DB presentation. And then when it's finished, I'm going to query again to see if the updates actually took. So all this is in one script. I'm selecting the data I need to update, doing the update, and then verifying the update is there. And then the methods that or functions that I'm using to do this is just the query items, which I used before, passing that select statement. And then we have an upsert item, which is the function that the Python SDK has that will actually do the database updates. So just go back over to my terminal. And actually, let me make this a little bit bigger because I just realized it's not really even centered. All right. And so we can say like example update.py. And then now it went pretty quick. I actually, unfortunately, there's so much data that I don't know if this actually is going to really provide a lot of value to what I was just trying to show. Okay, yeah, here we go. So we've ran it. These are the records that we selected originally, and you see the status is uploaded. Then if you go down here, whoops, sorry, here it is. So query the values first. Yeah, so now it's the console statement. We have status is uploaded. Now if we go, it should say query values again. So this is the second step of the program and show the update. So now with the query and the update applied, we have hello from Azure Cosmos DB, and this is all the records. Now, I know a lot of people are probably looking at this and being like, okay, well, you can log anything. Let's actually look in the console. So if we go over here and we just hit a quick refresh, and now if you look for, let's see if we can find one. Actually, let's just go ahead and do where c dot make equals Nissan, and then just select the values, and you see hello from Azure Cosmos DB. So you see that the updates have actually occurred. The one thing that I should point out too is that I'm doing these all on essentially sets of data. Like I've selected, and I'm using this query items. There's ways that you can do this on individual records. You don't necessarily have to do it like in batch, like kind of what I'm doing. We do that a lot more on my team, but that's because we deal with batches of vehicles and batches of records and stuff like that. So that updates, right? So now we have the update, we have a query. Let's talk about like a delete. So let's say that like, whatever reason, got a load of Nissan cars and they're all screwed up. We want to get rid of them. So basically you could do the same thing we did with the other ones. You set up that client to actually do the work. And then in the main program, query the vehicles you want to delete. And then I have a little wrapper function right here, which, oops, sorry, went too fast. We iterate through those and we delete the item with the ID. So basically you're given your items, you've got your partition key to identify which one you want to delete, and then it actually does the delete. And then I have like a try catch. So if there's any errors, we catch them. That's normally you might even want to do like a retry or something like that. But for the cases of this presentation, I'm just doing like a try catch here. So I just showed you in the console, I've got the Nissan, and these are all the Nissan cars. Let's run this delete script and see what happens. So we have example delete.py. Okay. All right, and then you notice I'm logging each one. So successful delete, deleting, successful delete, deleting. The query, and then what happened at the end of the script, which I should have also said, is that I queried the values again to see how many were actually there. And that's what's being output right here. And if you notice that there's 0 with the selected make Nissan. Now again, you might not necessarily believe me. Anybody can run code. Let's go over to the console and see what happens if I hit a refresh. There's nothing. There's nothing with Nissan in this collection. Now, let's say I just edit the filter, and then clear this out. Apply filter. There we go. And now you notice that all the other cars are there. We've got the Kias, we've got the Chevrolet, but there's no Nissan. So we successfully purged the database of the records that were Nissan. Now, finally, this is all fun, but let's talk about like taking it a step above just working with your data. What if you want to do things like create and delete containers? In the original script that I wrote in the load data one, you notice that I actually did the create of the container. And so that's what using Python SDK's function to create the container. If I want to delete a container, I can do the same thing. just one liner. It goes and we say delete container, give it the ID, and good to go. So let's go ahead and, as I've been showing you, we've got the Seattle vehicles collection right here. Let's go ahead and just delete it. So if I do Python 3, make sure I got the right script. We have example delete. Yep. All right. Example delete. Oops. Delete.py. And then there are 0 records with Nissan, query values to make again to show. And oh, whoops, sorry. Is that I meant cleanup. Sorry about that. That was my fault. Moving a little too fast. There we go. Okay, so I've ran that script. Now let's go over here, and then we just do a refresh, and it's gone. So with the Python SDK, what I've just showed you is that we can generate a collection, like create a collection, not generate, but create a collection. We can load values into the collection. We can query values, select what you need. We can output it with like something like Python pandas. We can do updates to the records that we need, and we can do deletes. This is all basic standard stuff that we need to do on any type of development team with our data. And this Python SDK allows you to do that, which is pretty awesome. If we go back to kind of my story, when we left off, I just showed you that we had a problem. Let me see if I can go to slideshow. There we go. So what did we do as a team? So this wasn't something that happened overnight. I wrote this blog post, basically, a little like anecdote about myself. I do a lot of kind of tinkering, I guess, on the side. I really like code. I love writing code. I love learning about code. And, this was kind of one of those things where I noticed a problem, and then in my free time, I kind of found a solution, or I started like kind of brainstorming, and I was like, what's the different way we could do this? So I started by doing like the blog posts that I've shared, and basically all of what I just showed you. I found that this is the way that we could do to solve this problem. And so then I thought about, like, I brought it back to my team at work, and I thought, how can we do this and do it in a way that the team would use it, that it would help alleviate a lot of our, bottlenecks and development efforts. And then, what's something that can be scalable. So it's like a solution that we could use and continue to use as the team matures and, we start working on different projects and stuff like that. So the first step I did was I just created a GitHub project. So like, just basically what I just showed you a second ago, I had a couple of scripts. I started creating like wrapper functions, and there's like a little screenshot right here, where I could like just what I showed you in these examples, and they just do standard things, right? The problem I had was the team that I was on was not very familiar with Python. They're more of a combination of .NET and JavaScript. And so the Python was kind of like they knew a little bit, but they didn't really know a significant amount. So the goal of what I was doing, if I wanted it to be adopted, was that I wanted to make it plug and play. Basically, anybody on the team with a very minimal learning curve could pick it up and run with it. So I started with the project. I wrote a couple scripts. I showed them to the team and basically kind of got consensus. I kind of shared, and I talked to our tech lead about it. Like I said, like, hey, this is what we're doing, what I think is a good idea. Everybody kind of agreed. So when I kind of got like a kind of a buy-in from everybody involved, I put some work on the board and said, like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to try to create a little bit more robust solution to this. So we started with, as I said, we're managing all these collections. So basically in the project that we created, each folder, or I had folders in the project that were pertaining to the collection. So I had basically groups of things like, these queries for like querying values or deleting values and stuff like that. But these are groups of wrapper functions, I guess is probably what I should have said. And so I basically kind of started there, created like a wrapper function for kind of instantiating your credentials. I wrote out like a pretty extensive README, which explained what I'm doing, and then also how to set up your local env file. I didn't really show it, but basically there's an env file that sits in the project, and whenever these scripts run, it reads from that to get your credentials for Cosmos DB and like what container you want and all that kind of stuff. So had all this set up, kind of I did a big presentation to a couple of different developers, and then finally to our team as, this is going to be like a way that we can do this. So the team was really responsive, really great to work with, and they were very supportive of what I was doing because they could see how this could, help us. So we team started using it, we were doing like one-off things. quickly became noticeable that we needed to be able to have a uniform approach to what we're doing. So basically, we needed kind of a team norm around the work that we were delivering. So I kind of like set up a team norm that everything that you do on this project, you would do as a PR. PRs are great because, like I said in my original slide, my goal for all of this was to be able to have an automated way to do things, but also have a way to be able to see history. So I wanted to be able to see what we've done so we could go back and refer to it in the past. Also, so we could see like if we screwed up, like, hey, we messed this up. So, basically if you've ever done like a data migration or like a table migration or whatever, you always save that copy of the data, you do the work, but you have that, in case you ever need to do it again. So all this was being stored in our GitHub repo, which was really great. I took it a step further and I created another Python script. Python is like a super powerful language because you can do almost anything with Python. And I basically created a script that generates the files. So like, the path that, or the common pattern that I showed you in all these examples was, you set up that client, you read in your credentials, and then you do the work, right? So I wrote a script that generates that file. So like basically, if anybody wants to do these kind of things on our collections, run that script, and then that actually generates the file that you can then run. So you just have to add the few lines of code where you're calling these, functions. When we would have things, with data, a lot of times you have weird situations like maybe we need data within a certain time range, or we would have a situation where we need vehicles in a certain status or something like that. Anytime we did that, I got the team to create a wrapper function for that use case, and then we could reuse it. This just makes all this like super fast and super, easy to implement and work with for, our day-to-day tasks on our team. We also did I brought pandas, like I mentioned, onto the into the project. Pandas, there's a lot of people if you can just spend a little bit of time with it, it's very easy to kind of get up and running. There's a lot of great documentation, but it's really nice for reporting, especially. So we use that for reporting. And then finally, the thing that, I've already basically said this, but my little flow chart here is basically what we would do. So we, as a team, we had a data action we needed to do. We would go identify the action, we write our script, run it, do the work, and then we save that work as a PR to our repo. So at the end of the day, we had, an automated way to do this. We also had a version history saved, and, it alleviated a lot of the pain. And this saved us a lot of time because, like I said before, when we first started, we were doing a lot of things manually. I should say, we also had kind of a situation where we had helper endpoints. We have an API that we work with that we maintain, and we created some kind of hidden endpoints that we would use to do a lot of this stuff. Now with this tool, we can do without having to do all that work to write that code and generate that API. We can just use the Python SDK to do all the work that we need. And it gives you, it's really powerful because it gives you control of the data, right at your fingertips. And you can pretty much do anything that you have permission to do. If you have access to this data, you can use this SDK to just do, a lot of really powerful things. And finally, the thing that I just wanted to bring back home was just lessons learned. So like I said, having GitHub and having our everything stored as a PR was really helpful for us to be able to know our history. Other teams could do it differently. Honestly, if you have a documentation process, maybe you might want to save the record somewhere else. Obviously, we're not saving records of data actually in the repo. We would save that somewhere else. But the point is what you did to do what you were doing. So you could, if you had to do data cleanup one day and then a month later you're in that same situation, pull up that data cleanup script from a month ago, and then you can run it and get your changes, and everything is fancy and fast. We also had having team norms, like I said in the my kind of explanation, getting the consensus, getting buy-in from everybody is really important. You don't want to just do mad science work here. You definitely want to get the consensus. Having the scripts avoided the user errors. Again, like I said, with the manual processes, because it was manual, we also created a lot of problems. We would, I've done that before. I'd blow up 1,000 records by accident because I ran something or tried to do a change and it didn't work. But having these scripts minimize that error. And then finally, like I said, the regression, being able to see what we've done in the past and rerun it if we needed to, was just really, really helpful. So with that, I'm sure there's probably questions, or Jay, you might have some more information, and I can give you back the control.
Sure. I was thinking about this as you were doing your presentation. I was curious. When you're executing these, have you considered using something like a Azure function to have some of these as triggered services?
Yeah, so that's actually, it's interesting you say that. We've talked about that. That would probably be the next logical step for this work. We like what we've been doing so far has been with this specifically has been very like kind of minimal on the user side. We're working with like an internal application with a kind of a smaller subset of users, but having those functions and being able to run it at scale like that would definitely, I could see that being a value. And honestly, that's probably what we'll do eventually if we get enough time with the data.
Sure. And someone, Peter, on our chat asks, does this library integrate with Azure resources such as blob storage? I know that the Azure Python SDK absolutely does that, especially using like the REST API to create resources. Have you had any experience personally with using different services using the Python libraries for Cosmos or for Azure?
No, that was, this was kind of like the majority of the experience I've had using like these SDKs. I've used a lot of the JavaScript SDKs for working with Azure, but like my experience with Python is kind of limited. I'm not really like necessarily like a Python developer by trade, so this is all like kind of side of desk, learning. But I will say that like, I'm sure that if you use that, there's probably a tutorial and there's probably some kind of integration that would be easy to pick up. The documentation for all this was just fantastic. I mean, outside of just like the stuff that Microsoft officially delivers, lots of people blog about it. There's like YouTube videos. It's just, there's a great community support for these products.
Great. So I also have another question. This may be for me a little bit more because it's not really in scope of your session. But someone asked Danny, can AZ Data Factory make use of these Python SDK? These are kind of different services. The Python SDK is essentially kind of being used to manipulate and create resources, manipulate data. Data Factory is kind of a different service. So not necessarily related. However, you can use a data factory and pipeline using Python. It's kind of a different process. I'm going to drop in our chat, I'm going to drop some documentation that you can follow up on. But anyhow, I think, Andrew, we've reached the end unless there's any new questions. How is Azure Cosmos DB priced? Is it on storage or queries? Peter, that's a great question. And before we go, let me grab you some documentation. It has what's called a request unit pricing. You can look up a little bit more documentation on how REUs work. Here is a document that I've put in the chat. And if you have more questions, you can always follow up with me after. So that being said, Andrew, I'm gonna go ahead and have you come and give some closing and let people know where to get in touch with you. After, Askia joins us again. Hi there. I know you've got some closing stuff for us.
Yeah.
Sure.
Basically, we are just, we want to thank both you, Jay, and Andrew for an excellent session. And we are always interested in feedback. So we've gone ahead and put the survey link and the event code up on the screen. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you've got any suggestions or ideas, go ahead and put those in, or anything that you'd like to see. We will definitely take that into consideration and hopefully give you what you're looking for.
And I know, Askia, next month we've got another session.
That's right.
Another great one. We're going to be having Larry Voss, VP of Developer Relations for Llama Index. Be sure that you join us. I think this is going to be a great one. We all love AI. We all love RAG pattern created applications. And now we have a great session for you to come and join us next month. So we'll see you there January 9th, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. But we want to go ahead and close out today's session. And so, Andrew, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. I know that I always learn from my guests. I know, Askia, you always learn from our guests. So we just want to say thank you so much for being part. So Andrew, if people want to get in touch with you to talk a little bit more about Python, a little bit more about what you're doing at CarMax, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure, yeah. LinkedIn's probably the best route, but I can send you the social media links. I'm on, Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So any of those, channels, you probably could find me. But LinkedIn is probably the best route if you want to find me.
So everybody, it's a quick search on LinkedIn. You'll find Andrew there. But you're going to always find us here every month. And like I said, one of the big keys of being able to do these sessions is having you a part of them. So make sure if you want to take part, here's a link, fill out our submission form right there. And we'd love to have you be part of one of these sessions to share what you've learned, just like Andrew showed today, what he's learned. So that being said, hey, thank you both for helping me along today. I want to remind everyone, this is your show. We want to have you part of it because this is a group. Go ahead, leave comments in the YouTube description, or I should say the YouTube if you have more questions. I can always pass them along to Andrew. That is basically it today. So thank you so much. We will see you next month. Until then, let's give everybody the big wave goodbye. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye now.